Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Mercury in Cancer. Mercury is very close to the Sun. So it stands to reason that if your Mercury is in Cancer, your Sun sign could also be in Cancer. But your Sun sign could be Gemini or your Sun sign could be Leo. So this will modify some of the effects, although it could work the other way around, where Mercury in Cancer modifies the Sun in Leo or the Sun in Gemini. Now, Mercury is the planet of communication, also how your mind works, what kind of thoughts you have, how you express those thoughts, how you take in information, how you process information. We don't all do it the same way. It will vary from sign to sign and person to person, of course, too. Cancer is a cardinal water sign. So Cancer, whether we're talking about the Sun, we're talking about Mars, or we're talking about Mercury or Venus, even the Moon and the rising sign, these are the core personal points of a person's natal chart, and they really form the core personality. And therefore, any of these points that Cancer is in is going to be similar, although it will express itself a bit differently and function a bit differently depending on what planet or what point it is. So with Mercury in Cancer, it's easy to see that the person communicates in an emotional way. And what this means specifically for Cancer is that they are very tied to the past. So if you have Mercury in Cancer, you are a very sentimental person, even if your sun sign is in Gemini, and Gemini tends to like novelty and tends to like, new stimulation, in other words. You still will have that part of yourself that's a little bit sentimental, a little bit, sometimes even a little corny, where you just really are moved by, Hallmark cards and things like that, because that emotional part is coming out in terms of the way that your mind works, the way it takes in information. So you're a sucker, no matter what your sun sign is, you're a sucker for any kind of sentimental writing. And this could be even like I said, some kind of an advertisement that really is meant to appeal to the emotions. For Mercury in Cancer, it could be the deciding factor. I was just reading that this is what a sales pitch is supposed to be like. The best sales pitch appeals to the emotions, and that people buy things in an emotional state. Now, I don't know if that's true across the board, but it really makes sense to me that it probably is true many times, that people are triggered by something that they connect to a memory, and then they shell out the dough, okay? So for Mercury in Cancer, you are really susceptible in certain ways to any kind of medium that exploits your sentimental nature. And sometimes it can be just simply that you enjoy a romantic novel or, a sappy love story, movie, or just, the things that really kind of bring out the emotions. That's very appealing to you. And because you are so connected to the past, you have a memory like an elephant. It was funny because when I was, jotting down, the computer equivalent of jotting something down, typing out some of the traits that were mentioned in a particular website. I did go to a couple, but one of them is called Codex, and it's very good. But anyway, I didn't see anyone. The couple of websites I went to, they didn't mention this, but they mentioned the memory, but it's really a strong memory. And what happens with Mercury in Cancer, as well as Cancer in general. If your sun sign is in Cancer, you will nod your head in agreement too, probably, is that you can collect old slights, in other words, old disses that were done to you in the past, and kind of nurture them as, grievances, for instance, of what people did to hurt your feelings, because Cancer is a sign that is incredibly sensitive and, dare I say, hypersensitive. It's very difficult for a Cancerian to not take things personally because the mind is very subjective. And this is, by the way, this is even true for a Sun in Cancer person who may be more aggressive, may have their Mercury in another sign that's a masculine sign, and be more aggressive, but when it's almost like they can dish it out, but they can't take it. In this case, with Mercury in Cancer, you may not want to dish it out if your sun is in Cancer too, and you certainly don't want to take it. And if somebody even expresses an opposing view, you may take that as some kind of personal slight, instead of seeing that that person has a different way of looking at things. So there's too much subjectivity, too much reactivity, and what happens is that the Mercury in Cancer person can clam up. And when I wrote this down, I was thinking about how you are the symbol of the crab. And so here I am kind of mixing. It's not mixing metaphors, but mixing animals, or I don't know if, crustaceans, mixing crustaceans. So this is because, for one thing, probably a lot of this is that Cancer is a feminine sign, okay? The water signs and the earth signs are feminine. The fire and air are masculine. And so the fire and air signs will tend to be more aggressive. And this can include speech if they have Mercury in a fire sign as well. For a Mercury in Cancer individual, they're not necessarily loquacious. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Talkative. I'm trying to sound really like a big shot. But they tend to be more interested in conversing with people that are part of their inner circle, okay? Because Cancer is a very clannish sign. It tends to prefer being with its own people, its family, its close-knit friends. And those friends they may have known for many years, some from childhood, because the past is so valuable to them. And so they're not necessarily going to just run their mouths indiscriminately. And even if a person has a sun sign in Gemini or Leo, which is more outgoing, if they have Mercury in Cancer, they may be more quiet than the typical Gemini or Leo individual. And this can even manifest as being slightly, I don't know if you'd say insecure, but timid. Certainly, I would say is the shyness that can come out with Cancer. This could come out in even the Gemini and Leo sun signs communication style. So, a lot of people just assume that all Leos are just the life of the party, and that's not true. It also can depend upon their sun placement. If they have the sun in the 12th house, they may be very into their own little world and more like a Pisces sometimes than a Leo. But this can be an example of how this can subdue that aggressive energy. Because, the more I think about it, the more I realize that Mercury is very important. I kind of have given Mercury short shrift in my, focus when I have done these special sets of readings about the different the planets in different signs, and I realize now that communication is incredibly important, and it's like your calling card if you think about it. And so with Mercury in Cancer, these are people, because of having such a strong memory and being, romanticizing the past, that they are wonderful, or I keep saying they, I should say you are wonderful storytellers. And you may relish kind of like talking about maybe a relative or a series of relatives at the family gatherings, and talking about things that they did that were funny or touching or what have you. And by the way, I just wanted to mention the sense of humor of a Mercury in Cancer person. Cancer, I don't know if I'm correct about this, that they have a lot of comedians. The sun, I'm talking about the sun in Cancer, but some of them may also have Mercury in Cancer. Cancer can be a funny sign. I think that it's kind of subdued because there is the tendency to be sensitive to other people's feelings, so especially nowadays when there's so much put down humor, I don't think a Mercury in Cancer person would go that route. But I think the reason that these people are great with humor in a very gentle sort of way is because they understand human nature so well. A person with Mercury in Cancer can be a great listener because they are very receptive to others, being a water sign. And they also are very caring and nurturing. And so somebody who is talking to a Mercury in Cancer person can really feel heard, I think, because there's a sensitivity there. And not all people who communicate in a sensitive manner. Sometimes people are just too harsh and brash, and, you can be to the point or, very, how would I put it, succinct and tell it like it is and be insulting or being hurtful. Even if you're telling the truth 100%, there has to be sensitivity when you communicate, where you're taking into account how another person's going to receive your truth. And some people are almost proud of the fact that they are so blunt, and they say, well, it's just the truth. And first of all, that's not necessarily true, because we all have a certain degree of subjectivity when we communicate. But it's also not the case that that makes it okay just because something is true. You can't use truth as a weapon. So a Mercury in Cancer person is very likely, if they have to communicate something that is rather unpleasant, I would say they might be quite indirect. And if the person is anyone like me who's, totally, who might not get it sometimes, although I think now my intuitive qualities are a lot better in terms of like reading between the lines, but I know that there are some signs out there, and I would say they're the masculine signs, the air and the fire signs, who it might just go right over their head if a Mercury in Cancer person tries to hint at something and not really spell it out. That you really have to watch that you don't go too much in the other direction and be too indirect. And sometimes I think this can also come out in the moodiness that Cancer is associated with, where the Cancer individual, and I'm saying that whether it's Mercury or the sun sign, for instance, sulks in the corner. And they may, if somebody tries to talk to him and says, "What's wrong?" Nothing, snaps at them. A Mercury in Cancer person can be sensitive, but they also, when they are feeling like they've been neglected or insulted, they can turn around and be, when they're moody, and maybe be kind of gruff. There's another word. I don't know if gruff is the appropriate word, but just, how people kind of like, snap back at somebody, snippy because they're a little bit miffed about something. And it's far better to air your grievances when they happen than to hold them inside, which a Mercury and Cancer person can do until it gets to be too much. And then they let it out and they are very upset about it. And they could have, hashed it out with the person in the first place and not let it get so far. And like even men, one of the sites was mentioning how males with Mercury and Cancer can have that feminine quality. And they made a point of saying, that doesn't have anything to do with their general appearance or demeanor, which it does not. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I have found that, at least with the sun sign in Cancer, for the males, they tend to be macho. Maybe it's overcompensating for the fact that they're feminine signs. So, we're talking about Mercury now, so they may be very romantic. And they even said on this one site, they go too romantic. And I'm thinking, how can you be too romantic? Being romantic is wonderful. Maybe they mean too sentimental, where they are, verging on being, cornball or something like that. But no, I think that's wonderful. And I think it's wonderful when men can be like this. And also having, expressing themselves emotionally in their conversations. So that can be very good too, because women are conditioned to discussing their feelings and talking in general. So that can be a wonderful thing. But I think both genders are not necessarily that talkative overall. So the important thing is that Mercury in Cancer is very intuitive in general. And this can be a blessing for somebody because it allows them to really sense whether something is good for, whether it's good for you or whether it's not. So the thing that I would advise is becoming less subjective, not taking things too personally. I know it's easier said than done, but and not reacting so easily to things, because that can actually shut down communication. I think, I think the word I was looking for was touchy. Mercury in Cancer, as well as the Sun in Cancer, Mars in Cancer, Venus in Cancer can be touchy. And this can lead them to take offense to things that people are not meaning to insult them with or by. And no one likes to have to walk on eggshells when they're having conversations with people. And I'm sure all of us know people in our lives or people that we have talked to, and they're very touchy. And you say something innocent, and they just, recoil like they have been royally dissed. And it's like, no. And then you feel like you did something wrong when you didn't. So watch out for that tendency. But you are very artistic as well. And so I could see a Mercury in Cancer person writing a novel that could be autobiographical even, dealing with the past, dealing with your childhood or some memories maybe in your adolescent or in your first years away from home. and that sentimental feeling of writing about something long ago when things were so much different, when the world was so much different. A lot of novels, I don't know if people realize this, writers oftentimes will weave into their fictional works things that really happened. They may alter them a bit and give, a certain character some of these experiences that didn't occur to them personally. But it's there's a lot of fodder in the past, and Mercury in Cancer can mine that, like gold, and also have that emotional style that can really draw people in and into that world and really touch people. And you will see, the things that we call sappy, sentimental, those are the things that a lot of times are popular because people want to have their hearts be opened by works of art that are very romantic and emotional. So a Mercury in Cancer person has this innate ability to do this. I think being a teacher is a natural profession for Mercury in Cancer, not only because of the wonderful memory, which can retain information that is read, but also because, especially with younger ages, it's nurturing young minds and and also reliving when you were a child. And I think a lot of Mercury in Cancer people probably enjoyed school because they could learn, especially history. And you might be a great history teacher or professor because of the past. And having a good memory is important as a history teacher because you have to remember dates. But one hobby that Mercury in Cancer may enjoy is genealogy, looking up your family tree and researching that. And of course, nowadays with the internet, that is a piece of cake, I'm sure. I think it used to be a lot more involved. But who knows? Maybe it was a lot more fun when you had to do it, go through a bunch of hoops to get all that information. And now it's available at the click of a button. Okay, well, that's what I have for you guys and gals. I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you'd like a private natal chart reading, please click on the link below. And thank you for listening. Bye.